Quote, "We have taken the first steps in a new historic stage of the struggle for what is ours." These were the words of Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro in his speech to the nation following a referendum, which took place on the 3rd of December. The vote was held to gauge the mood of Venezuelans over Caracas' territorial claims to the Essequibo region of neighboring Guyana. 95% of voters backed efforts to take control of the Essequibo. The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela claims that it is entitled to control 70% of the territory of the neighboring Republic of Guyana. The referendum has been preceded by increased activity by the Venezuelan military and a higher level of readiness by Brazilian troops, who have relocated to the disputed territory. The Americans and British, on the other hand, are preparing Guyanese forces. All the signs point to an invasion being a viable scenario. The Essequibo dispute dates back to the era of European colonization, but there are many more motives for its resurgence. At stake are billions of dollars from Guyana's natural resources, an internal electoral showdown in Venezuela, a regional balance of power, and a global rivalry. The latest news is that Maduro has announced the unilateral annexation of the Essequibo by Venezuela. So let's take a look at the Essequibo, where the specter of invasion looms on the map. Consider leaving a like if you enjoyed the video to aid the algorithm. The dispute over the Essequibo region, also known as Guyana Essequiba, has been going on for more than 180 years. The 160 square kilometer region, slightly larger than Greece, lies west of the Essequibo River. For decades, Caracas has marked the Essequibo as a contested territory on its maps. Let's not forget that we are talking about more than 70% of the territory of a neighboring country. Nevertheless, the Venezuelan claims are not completely out of the blue. To look at the issue in more detail, we need to go back to the period of colonization. First under Spanish and then Dutch control, the British finally incorporated the Essequibo into their empire in 1814 through a treaty with the Netherlands. However, the treaty did not clearly define the western border. On the other hand, both Gran Colombia, which gained independence from the Spanish Empire in 1819, and the Republic of Venezuela, which separated from Gran Colombia in 1830, had a clear position on the border with British Guyana. Each should follow the Essequibo River. The discovery of gold in the Essequibo in 1840 brought British attention back to the area and formalized British action. In 1835, Robert Schomburg, a German explorer working for the Royal Geographical Society, undertook a botanical and a geographical survey of British Guyana, on London's request. The result of these surveys was a concept of a boundary which, according to Schomburg, corresponded to the western boundary of the lands claimed by the Dutch and later the British. The British therefore opted for a border drawn along the Schomburg line, which added some 80,000 square kilometers to the territory. Venezuela rejected the new borders and called for US intervention. And so Washington pressured for international arbitration of the case in 1865. 34 years later, the Paris arbitration ruled in favor of the British and established the Schomburg line as the official border. In the mid-20th century, however, revelations surfaced that suggested a possible conspiracy. The British were said to have secretly collaborated with a Russian lawyer, Friedrich Martens, who had been a judge in the 1899 trial that resulted in the Essequibo falling to the British Empire. Venezuela annulled the decision in 1962 and reported the irregularities to the UN. Although the UK refused to review the accord, negotiations began that led to the Geneva Agreement of 1966, which is still in force today. This agreement essentially supported the status quo, recognizing Venezuela's territorial claims and instructing the UN to seek a solution. In 2018, Guyana appealed to the International Court of Justice in The Hague, the UN's main judicial body, to resolve the territorial dispute. But Venezuela rejected the court's jurisdiction to settle the dispute. Yet the court has since ruled on the case 3 times. In 2020, recognizing its jurisdiction. In April 2023, rejecting Venezuela's request to involve the United Kingdom. And on the 1st of December 2023, 2 days before the referendum in Caracas, it ordered Venezuela to refrain from compromising the regional status quo until a final decision had been made on the matter. Shortly after the Hague Court's decision, Venezuelan military units displayed banners saying Essequibo is ours, calling for the annexation of the Essequibo region to Venezuela. Nicolas Maduro, meanwhile, accused Guyana of posing a, quote, serious threat to stability and peace. On the same day, Defense Minister Padrino Lopez declared that Venezuela would, quote, march against imperialism in Guyana. Fear is growing and the specter of invasion hangs over Guyana. So let's now look at the strategic situation. The Venezuelan armed forces consist of 3 traditional branches: Land Army, Navy and Air Force, all with a strength of around 130,000 soldiers, supplemented by the National Guard and the Bolivarian militia. It constitutes a reserve of 3 million citizens with limited military training, used as a repressive force by the socialist Maduro regime. Venezuela is the only country in the region with medium and long-range air defense systems, including Russian-made S-300 and Buk M2 batteries. With these capabilities, Venezuela can effectively control its airspace and deter any Latin American air force, including Brazil. Additionally, the Venezuelan army has several hundred artillery pieces, mainly OTO Melara M56. What's more, nearly 200 Russian T-72 tanks and obsolete French AMX-30 tanks. Venezuela also has 200 BMP-3 and BTR-80 armored vehicles, recently purchased from Russia. The Air Force consists of a fleet of 23 Su-30 fighters and 16 F-16 fighters, although their combat readiness is unknown due to the US embargo. Air support is provided by a group of just 10 Mi-35 attack helicopters and only 3 Mi-26 transport helicopters. The state of the Venezuelan Navy is even worse. Caracas has a very limited number of frigates, corvettes and patrol boats. Its 2 submarines have been decommissioned, and the operational status of its 2 landing ships is unknown. Although Venezuela is not a military power, these capabilities are sufficient to overwhelm Guyana, which has no significant defense capabilities. Guyana spends a minimal 0.6% of its GDP on defense. The result is a poorly equipped and trained force, using outdated Brazilian military technology, such as Cascavel and Urutu armored vehicles, and Spanish VSC M1 armored vehicles. Artillery and air defense are non-existent, and the country lacks helicopters and fighter planes. Guyana also has no navy. Venezuela's small but dominant vis-à-vis Guyana military capability stems from its relationship with Russia. Caracas has been a regular customer of Moscow since 2005, when the first arms deal was signed. Political scientist Arnaldo Cardozo, a professor at Mackenzie University, knows that between 2007 and 2011, Venezuela purchased more than $12 billion worth of arms from Russia. Since 2008, the 2 countries have conducted joint military maneuvers, including one involving a nuclear-powered cruiser and a pair of Tu-160 bombers. These were Russia's first such operations in Latin America since the Cold War. In December 2018, a Russian nuclear-capable bomber landed in Venezuela to prepare the country's defense in the event of a coup. As Maduro's consolidation of power weakened in 2019, and opposition leader Juan Guaido was recognized as interim president by more than 50 countries, Donald Trump reiterated that, quote, all options are on the table, suggesting that military intervention in Venezuela was not out of the question. However, Russian support, which included sending Wagner Group mercenaries into the country to bolster the president's security, ultimately strengthened Maduro's grip on power. This political support from Russia was confirmed in a meeting between Russian Security Council Secretary Nikolai Patrushev and President Maduro in March 2023. Patrushev praised, quote, Venezuela's public condemnation of the West and NATO's destructive policy towards Russia. But history shows that a hardware advantage only is no guarantee of success. Remember that the Essequibo is essentially a jungle. This Amazon jungle poses quite a challenge to the movement of tanks and large military formations. The terrain itself is a de facto major